You're watching the West Block on Global.
Welcome back. On Friday, four premiers converged on Ottawa. Jason Kenney, Brian Pallister, Doug Ford and François Legault demanding the federal government give more money to the provinces for health care, saying the system is broken. They are looking for $70 billion from the federal government to be injected into the healthcare system, as well as $10 billion in infrastructure spending and money for provinces like Alberta, who have been hard hit economically on top of COVID. Joining me now to talk about all of this is the Premier himself, Jason Kenney, who is here in Ottawa. Thank you for joining us, Premier Kenney.
Thanks very much, Mercedes.
You've come to Ottawa to ask the federal government to spend more money on health care as well as more money in fiscal stabilization funding for Alberta. Why do you believe you need that money?
Well, I think healthcare speaks for itself. The provinces were supposed to get 50% of funding for healthcare from Ottawa when the program was created 5 decades ago. We're down to provinces paying 80% of the bill. And for us in Alberta, with the fiscal catastrophe that we are now living, on top of all the huge costs associated with COVID, that's coming home in a very real and human way. But as you know, Mercedes, we're also facing an economic crisis, a jobs crisis in Alberta, and have been for 5 years. Going through economic stagnation, the global COVID recession on top of the biggest collapse in oil prices in history has hit us especially hard. And the human consequences of that are enormous, which is why we are demanding fiscal fairness. Albertans have been very good to the rest of Canada, paying over $600 billion net to the rest of the Federation over the past 5 decades, even $20 billion a year annual contributions during recent tough times. But the federal government has capped something called the Fiscal Stabilization Program arbitrarily. It's supposed to be there for provinces like Alberta. When we are in a big economic downturn, we need that now. What we're asking, and we've got the support of all 13 provinces and territories for that fairness. It would represent about $6 billion for Alberta to put to work in both our health system and in job-creating programs.
Dominic Leblanc essentially said in a press conference on Friday that he didn't understand why you and Premier Pallister, Premier Legault, Premier Ford came to Ottawa in person to make this ask. He said this has been an ongoing conversation that he's already told the premiers. This was something you would talk about as the fall went on. It kind of felt like he was saying it might be a political stunt. So why did you come to Ottawa if these conversations are already underway?
Because this is so important, we had to find a way to highlight these desperate needs in our country for our people. This is not about politics, it's about people. It's about healthcare, it's about jobs. And the premiers do come together to meet usually twice a year. We were supposed to meet this week in Quebec City, but that couldn't happen because a lot of the Atlantic premiers can't travel with their bubble down there. So we decided instead, those of us who could attend, to be here in Ottawa to underscore the unanimity of all provinces and territories on these questions about a fair distribution of healthcare costs, particularly during this healthcare crisis, and fiscal fairness, particularly for the resource-producing provinces like Alberta, Newfoundland, and Saskatchewan. As we have contributed so much to the rest of the country, now is our hour of need, and Albertans have had Canada's back for decades. We need to see Canada have Alberta's back right now, and that's what this statement represents from premiers right across the country. There were 4 of us here for logistical reasons, but we speak for all 13.
We'd heard here at Global News that initially the government was looking at up to $100 billion in green spending in the throne speech. That's been knocked way back because of the climbing numbers with the pandemic. But there's still talk of a green recovery. Does it concern you that Alberta will be left out of that?
Well, I think this is one of the reasons that premiers decided to come to Ottawa, because we started to hear these trial balloons from Ottawa in the last 2 or 3 weeks about all sorts of ideological shiny objects about spending money on things not related to healthcare or jobs. And we're here to say that Canadians want governments at all levels and all parties to be focused on protecting both lives and livelihoods. If there are parties or governments that want to pursue their ideological concerns at some point in the future, they can do that and be accountable to the voters. But in this COVID year, in this the largest economic contraction in 9 decades, surely we can all agree that we should be single-mindedly focused on the public health urgency and the economic crisis that's in front of us. That's the message being sent by Canada's premiers today.
I know that you got along very well with Chrystia Freeland. Do you feel that Dominic Leblanc is hearing the province's concerns in the same way?
Yes, very much so. And Dominic and I have known each other for many years, have a great relationship. He came all the way out to Edmonton to spend several hours listening to Alberta's perspective, and I trust he's taking those back to the federal cabinet table. But he is just one minister. And I think we can see with all of the trial balloons coming out of Ottawa that there are other ministers who want to exploit the COVID crisis to turn money away from, effectively, healthcare and job creation towards programs that have nothing to do with either of those things. And that could, another point here, Mercedes, is we're asking the federal government to do first, in this crisis, do no harm when it comes to jobs and the economy, but they are layering on or threatening to impose more and more costly, job-killing regulations on which would disproportionately hammer Alberta and the resource provinces, the clean fuel standards. They're using the Bill C-69 No More Pipelines law to intervene in mining operations in Alberta, potentially to chase away investments and kill thousands of jobs. So part of my message is, please do no harm. Get to the people at Environment Canada and some in the federal cabinet, please get Ottawa's foot off the throat of our economy. Allow us to recover. If we want to talk about continued environmental progress, we're happy to, but let's put first things first, and those are health and jobs.
Premier Jason Kenney, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mercedes.
Up next, will the government survive the vote on the speech from the throne? We speak to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh on whether or not his party will back the government.